Okay, we're trying again. And I don't know what happened, but something happened. We're... I'm stuck. A spiritual warriorship. And this evening we're going to conclude Chapter 6 in Spiritual Warrior 3. And we've been there for a couple of weeks. The Spiritual Warrior's View of the World. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami tells us that a true spiritual warrior strives to master the weapons of love, humility, compassion, faith, and self-knowledge. And those of you who are regular, and if you're just coming for the first time, these are wonderful qualities. Now, the spiritual warrior's battleground is the realm of human consciousness. And what do you do there? We wage war in the consciousness against ignorance and lust. Because that's what's pervading this material world now in our whole human society. Are there people in the chat room now? Could you ask if anybody was cut off? They said?
Yeah, the whole thing stopped.
Oh, the whole thing stopped. Okay, but we're back on now. And you're still hanging in. Okay. Okay, so spiritual warrior, what's our objective? Our objective is a civilization where people live in harmony with each other and with God. So that's what we're moving towards. And we have to develop ourselves, our consciousness, and then share our understanding with the people we meet. Okay? Giving them the tools they need to discover and experience the truth of their lives. And again, as I put out, if those of you who have been listening regularly have noticed a change in your consciousness, or that you have applied and put into practice some of this nectar, I call it, from Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and you care to share, I would be open to hear from you on that. And again, if you're not in the chat room, or you don't go, or if you're just there and don't want to communicate, you can communicate with me offline at Mother and Johnny 108 at gmail.com. Okay? So it's nice hearing from you. So let's look where we've been. We just read what a spiritual warrior strives to master. And we've just been through a whole chapter entitled Spiritual Warrior's View of the World. Of course, I would love to ask each of you to share something, but let's go through this so we can get to the questions. It may be a question you have on your mind that was asked at the lecture. So where did we go with this chapter? We're saying that spiritual warriors, if we consider them transcendentalists, can be happy in the material world. It sounds strange, but they can, because spiritual warriors can see above the material dualities, and they know that their parole is at hand, because this world is like a prison. But if we're following and using these weapons of a spiritual warrior, our world is definitely changing. Spiritual warriors we looked at, remember, we're not our bodies. Oh, really? I'm not my body, who am I? Come on, remember? What does he tell us? Fundamentally, We are spiritual, transcendental, anti-material entities in a physical, using a physical body as a vehicle, huh? It gives you a sense of who you are. I was talking today, I try to get massages to this old body, trying to keep it going to serve as long as I can. And I remember saying to the massage lady, this week I am more comfortable in this body than I have been in a while. And that meant I was having less aches and pains. But it's really that sense of me, who I really am, being in a material body. And that material body does what it wants, acts up. And yet, that's where I am now. But in studying and practicing spiritual warriorship, I know there's a goal to reach. So what else do spiritual warriors understand? That we seek the highest pleasures, because we're pleasure seekers. We're part and parcel of God, and He's the enjoyer. But what spiritual warriors do, they seek the highest pleasure, which is what? Genuine, loving relationships that are caring and God-centered. Whatever relationship, Krishna, God, has to be in the center for there to be balance. Now, spiritual warriors also experience these higher pleasures through what? Spiritual activities and spiritual absorption. Who's your associate? Are you associating with people of like spiritual mindedness? Do you take time to go to your temple, your church? Do you read scriptures? You see, activities that will nurture your soul and keep you moving towards that goal of being caring and God-centered. A spiritual warrior, we kind of looked at that a spiritual warrior aims at purifying his or her own heart and consciousness. Why? Because so that we can in turn purify the atmosphere around us. You know, sometimes somebody will walk in the room and smile or say something and you feel a higher energy and you say, what a difference when that person came in the room. Because that's you as spiritual warriors, as you purify your heart and your consciousness. And not only you're purifying the environment, but people become attracted to you and want to know, what are you doing? What makes you so happy? What makes you seem so clear in what you're doing? And as we're doing that, we are acquiring relevant knowledge. And do what? To realign with the divine will. Not my will, thy will be done. And how is this done? Through service. Our ultimate condition, position, is servant of the Lord. And then as we serve and as we have spiritual activities, we begin to re-establish a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. Now, spiritual warriors, we looked at in this chapter, realize that as a servant of the Lord, oh, that's what it was. No, we looked at a Maya, remember that old expression, devil made me do it. And now if you're into this philosophy, you may say Maya crept in on me. But she doesn't really, because Maya is really a servant of the Lord. But she has a thankless task And what is that task? To offer us sugar-coated poison, to test us, and to ultimately reform us. Her task is to make sure that we don't become a nonsense to the Lord. That by the time we want to move closer to Him, we have been reformed, because when the poison, sugar-coated poison she gives us, puts us through quite a bit of difficulty, and usually it reforms us. So she teaches us the hard way. But if we go along with that, we begin to develop good judgment. And then we don't stray from the path of true happiness. Now, we also looked at how spiritual warriors understand that we must examine reincarnation. Remember, we went through reincarnation and the karmic pattern. But we have to examine reincarnation as deeply as possible. Why? Because our present life is linked strongly to our previous lifetimes. Millions, trillions of lifetimes. We've been going around this cycles. Birth and death and birth and death. But I feel so fortunate that this lifetime I've been brought to this ancient philosophy and teaching, and to a teacher and a guide and a mentor, to open my darkened eyes and really give me the knowledge to be able to understand more deeply who I am, and, as we just said, help me reestablish my relationship with the Supreme. So we also are understanding that our current life, combined with the residue of past lives, we cannot escape that. If we're here now in a material body, we've been in other bodies possibly, and back again in a material body. But the residue from those past lives will determine our present karma. And that karma is the action. For every action there's a reaction. So a crucial step in our maturation, our growth process, is to accept responsibility for the future we are creating. Words, action, and deeds now are creating our future karma. But if we take responsibility for that, we can then endure the present difficulties as necessary purification. Because you can have a sense of what's going on. You're cleansing, you're purifying from past lives or even from this life, and become more mindful of how you are speaking, acting, thinking. So we're also told that not all karma is negative. Isn't that good news? In case you didn't have that. But as a spiritual warrior, you know that. Because we carry with us the positive reactions of activities in the mode of goodness in a past life, past lives, and even in this one, if we move beyond the mode of ignorance and passion and to the mode of goodness. Now, along with that, the spiritual warrior also understands the importance of sense control. We have to have sense control so we can help others, and that's what we're out here to do, to help others. Because uncontrolled senses lead us to exploit others and even our own environment. Yes.
There's a question.
There's a question.
Do thoughts count towards our karma?
Thoughts, yes, because thoughts are really things, and the thoughts produce the action. If you think about something long enough, if you even think, somebody said something to you that you didn't really like, how could he speak to me that way? How could she? After a while, that'll manifest in some action, maybe harsh words, or even more dramatically, you walk up and punch the person. Why did you speak to me like that? Yes, and that, of course, going to bring a reaction. So yes, your thoughts can bring about karmic reactions. Is that okay? Who asked that, by the way?
Manjesh.
From Canada? Hi, Manjesh. Glad to hear you there. I hope that's helpful. So we thankfully we know that not all karma is negative. So now we're dealing with sense control. We kind of looked at that. And remember that we as humans are equipped for higher reasoning. We don't have to deal with our lower self. Remember when we were in Spiritual Warriors 6 and we dealt with how through the ages, at one time, most everybody had pure thoughts and actions, and as the ages went down, we started being half evil, half good. But we have to realize that once we get this human form, we're really equipped for higher reasoning. Only in the human form can you question, who am I? What is the meaning of life? So, and we're also meant for displaying compassion and humanity and ultimately divinity, knowing who we are as eternal beings. So, I think we almost finished that chapter, stating that the spiritual warrior understands the meaning of life, which is a personal philosophy, and believes that the material world was created by an omnipotent and supreme Godhead who takes personal interest in every aspect of his eternal associations. Bhagavad Gita, he tells us that we're all his parts and parcel fragments. So in all action, spiritual warriors remain focused on the most important question. And what have we been talking about? How do we get back in touch with Mother, Father, God? So that was a brief run through of what we've been through. As I say, I had asked questions, and I had planned to have a few more to try you again this week. But what we'll do, I want to look at questions that were asked after this class. And one is quite intriguing. Okay. Listen to this one and see, maybe you had this in mind and didn't want to ask it. In light of all you said, they're speaking to Bhaktitirtha Swami about karma, all you said earlier about karma and our reaping enjoyment or suffering based on that karma, I'm wondering about divine intervention. In our relationship with God, is there ever a justification for making specific requests? Can we ask God in prayer for whatever we consider necessary and desirable? Or should we just be content with the situation and allow Him to intervene as He will? Isn't that a good question? Thought about that? This is the answer. We should always pray for something, but we should pray intelligently. Now this means that we should always pray for the highest. The highest is connected with the understanding that God is eternally our greatest well-wisher. The more we realize that God knows what we need and want, the more genuinely can we utter the prayer, "Thy will be done." It's a knowing, and that knowing comes from the knowledge. We spoke about relevant knowledge that we acquire as we study, and as you imbibe that and practice it in your life, you know and you have a sense and realize that God knows what we need and what we want. Now he goes on, or we can pray in this way: "Dear Lord, please use me as you see fit. I don't understand all the contamination in my consciousness that has resulted from improper choices in this life and previous lives. I am not fully aware of what awaits me as a result of what I have put into motion. All I can do is beg you to let me be your humble servant." Mm-hmm. How's that for a wonderful prayer? Want to hear it again? Please, Lord, use me as you see fit. I don't understand all the contamination in my consciousness that has resulted from improper choices in this life and previous lives. I am not fully aware of what awaits me as a result of what I have put into motion. And this is a good prayer based on that question about thoughts. If we're not basically mindful and alert of our thinking process and our thoughts, things can come up from maybe a past life or with us sort of dull. So a prayer like this will alert the Lord to what you're understanding. You're not fully aware of what awaits you as a result of what you've put in. But all I can do is beg you to let me be your humble servant. And as you're serving the Lord, he takes away, he tells you, just surrender unto me, and I will protect you and remove your sins. Wonderful prayer. He continues with the answer. When we find ourselves praying for a particular outcome, which can happen, we should pray with a sense of regret that we have to focus on something other than better opportunities to serve. Keeps reminding us of our constitutional position, which is servant of the Lord. He's not our servant. So it's not about gimme, 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 gimme. It's about let me serve you, Lord. Praying to the Lord to become a better servant automatically includes having our internal obstacles removed. How about that? Praying to the Lord to become a better servant automatically includes having our internal obstacles removed. And that's usually those internal obstacles that's blocking us from moving ahead and becoming more advanced in our spiritual life. Such prayers are more not less, inclusive than prayers focused on a specific result. And the responses may include whatever we need, but do not even know how to ask for. Why? Because God is omnipotent. We're his parts. He knows everything about us. So he can give us more than we can even think about asking for, because he knows what we need and what will help us. In his great mercy, the Lord wants to help us even more than we want to be helped. If we do not take advantage of God's love and empowerment when they come through to us, we simply become an embarrassment. The spectacle we create can even influence others to become atheistic. It's like, everything we need or want is just there for us. We just have to turn to him. Not, gimme it, gimme! What's wrong with you? See how good I am? I just helped that old lady across the street. Now give me that new car I've been thinking about. It's not about that. How can I serve you more? Thank you, Lord, for helping me to help that old lady across the street. How can I serve you more? And he will give you more service, but as it says here, he also gives you what will remove your obstacles. In order to accept divine help, we have to appreciate that we are a little crazy, quite crazy actually, and that we are extremely clever at finding ways to run from God's love. When we begin to realize this, we can choose to stop fleeing and allow ourselves to fall back in love with the Lord. Because that's our original love. As spiritual warriors, which we are, right? How do we avoid becoming distracted from our goals? And I'd like to ask you, if you wanted to respond, what are our goals as spiritual warriors, just based on what we said in the beginning and what we've just reviewed in this chapter? If you have an idea or an answer, just put it there in the chat room, and I'll continue with his answer to that. As the question again, as spiritual warriors, how do we avoid becoming distracted from our goals? The answer is, he gives a story. There's a Vedic story about a great warrior and teacher by the name of Dronacharya, which once, while training some of his best archery students, he placed a fish-shaped target high in a tree and asked them to shoot an arrow through the small eye hole. As his first student, Yudhisthira arched his bow, Dronacharya stopped him and asked, "What do you see? Do you see the tree, the leaves, the fish?" Yudhisthira replied that he saw all of these things. Dronacharya said that Yudhisthira would not make the shot, and asked a similar question of each of his students. Each of them responded that they could see clearly the tree, the leaves, the fish, yet each was denied the opportunity to shoot. He called on Arjuna, who was his very special student, and asked him, "Do you see the tree?" Arjuna replied, "No." "Do you see the leaves?" Arjuna replied, "No." "Do you see the head of the fish?" "No." Dronacharya then asked, "What do you see?" Without taking his gaze from the target, Arjuna replied, "I see only the eye." Dronacharya allowed Arjuna to shoot, and the arrow struck its target. So this is a good example of the concentration and focus necessary as a spiritual warrior. There will be surely distractions in our environment, all kinds of distracting elements in our environment. There will always be setbacks and problems to distract and slow us down. But spiritual warriors, you hear your name, they do not let such things stagnate them. That's a wonderful question. There's one more that I think is quite interesting. Why do we sometimes hear that God has only one son? The answer, Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Many people say that Jesus is God's only son. Indeed, he was a powerful son. He came to earth and accomplished a great deal in only 33 years. However, by claiming that God can have only one son, these people minimize God's ability to act according to his own independent will. Such believers are really concerned with religious sectarianism, although they hide it behind a facade of spirituality. These individuals have failed to grasp the immensity of God, the hugeness, the massive. In this world, many are so envious of God that they try indirectly to discredit him, even while claiming deep religiosity. A God with only one son is a limited God. We do not worship a God with one son any more than we devote ourselves to a God with one city, one religion, one nation, one planet, one galaxy, or even one universe. Let Christ speak for himself. He said in John 14:12, "He that believeth in me, the works that I do, shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go on to my Father." He also said in John 6:38-19, "For I came down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me." There have always been great personalities like the Prophet Muhammad, Christ, Buddha, and others who deliver messages that are universal. If we look at the essence, It is their followers who have created sectarian divisions. The philosophy of mystical Christianity is not greatly different than that of Sufism. Mystic Islam is not profoundly different from the teachings of Buddhism and Hinduism. These various spiritual traditions are simply different vehicles to take us to the same destination. There's only one destination, back to God. And just as with an automobile or an airplane, once you reach the destination, the means of transport is no longer relevant. Every religion has an exoteric and an esoteric practices and teachings. Exoteric practitioners are involved in rituals, scriptures, and outward appearances. Because these practitioners look at the superficial, material aspects of their tradition, where differences are easily perceptible, they tend to be the ones who fight with others of different persuasions. Those who are involved in the esoteric aspect focus more on the essence, the deeper meaning. They direct their energies to consciousness raising and self-realization, delving beyond appearances into a direct experience of the divine. If we study bona fide spiritual process deeply enough, we will uncover the ancient, timeless wisdom that is universal to humankind. We must demand that our churches stop telling us absurd lies, claiming that God appears in only one way and has only one Son. If this were the case, why would Jesus say, "In my Father's house are many mansions"? Let us stop making our own interpretation and allow the prophets to speak for themselves. Why have we created dozens of different versions of the Bible? Why, when we read the Quran, do others give their own opinion, saying, "It doesn't mean that, it couldn't have meant that, and even if it did, it doesn't apply now"? This behavior is nonsense, whether it applies to Vedic, Christian, Baha'i, or mystery school teaching. In all circumstances, great teachers have come to show by their example what is necessary and what is possible in spiritual life. Okay, I'm going to do one more, and then we'll open for questions and maybe answers to questions. How can we as scientists develop a deeper appreciation for that which is really non-scientific? He states, you can begin by being honest and questioning what is really scientific. In other words, if something scientific is something scientific because of statistics, is something scientific if it's based on relative cultural patterns or perceptions. In certain cultures, a particular activity may be accepted, while in another, part of the world, that same action may be condemned. We all know that we are affected by heredity and environmental factors, which determine how we codify our surroundings. In this culture, we call scientific whatever is the best of what we know empirically at a particular time. We accept the current knowledge and use it because, of course, we have to be functional. On the other hand, those who believe that they have acquired all possible knowledge in any area are not scientists or scholars, especially today. Is it not true that the more we learn, the more we realize how much there is to learn? Only someone who has little knowledge will say, okay, I've mastered that. Now I know everything about it. As fast as things move today, there's no way one can say that. But this is the part I like, how he breaks this down. Science and spirituality can complement each other. The point of spiritual technology is to apply the scientific method of observation, experimentation, and proof to the knowledge contained in the scriptures. Did you get that? The point of spiritual technology is to apply the scientific method of observation, experimentation, and proof to the knowledge contained in the scriptures. As we apply these ancient principles in our lives and discover the wisdom behind them, we develop strong faith based on our experiences. I was just talking to someone today about devotees struggling and pain. I remember saying, if we are studying Bhagavad Gita, she brought up a point, and at that moment I was able to refer to a verse, and I remembered from the Bhagavad Gita. And my point was, if we take the teachings, instructions, if you will, in the Bhagavad Gita of Krishna himself, and apply it in our lives in a practical way, we will see how what he's saying is true, and we will increase our faith and have that firm conviction. And then we will see that those struggles are part of our growth process. So this is what he's saying. We can do it scientifically. In fact, Prabhupada has said many times, the philosophy, this Vedic philosophy, is scientific. And here Bhakti Tirtha is telling us, if we apply it, the scientific method of observation, experimentation, and proof to the knowledge contained. So you have to study, you have to get the knowledge. That's why we spoke earlier of spiritual activity, spiritual association, and that's where you'll do observation and experiment. You take what Krishna said, let's try it for a week. So these are not days of sentimentality. These are not the days for closed-mindedness. These are not the days for allowing ourselves to be cheated. Do not cheat yourself by thinking only of the physical model. And do not dupe yourself by embracing excessively dogmatic religion that undermines the universality of God. Put the scriptures to test. Try them. Use them. Enjoy them. And most of all, learn to be more loving towards others. Love will become an extremely powerful weapon as you become increasingly selfless. When we become more loving, we receive all kinds of empowerment as we attract more and more love to ourselves. Each of us must put these teachings to the test and judge by the results. What a wonderful, I feel, way to close this particular chapter of how the spiritual warrior views the world, and of course to bring our evening to a close. But you see, you have the scriptures, those of you out there, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Any scripture, if you go to the essence of it, will bring you to the basic truth of we're here for love of God, to love God, serve God, and become purified so our souls, though that eternal part of us, will go back home to the spiritual world and be with the Lord. So I close there. That's the end of this. I've decided for our next class, we're going to go to, if you have this book, chapter 8, How to Strengthen Ourselves. Now we've just been through all these views of the world and different aspects of it, and some may be wondering, well, that sounds pretty good, but I don't know, how do I do that? We're going to look at how to strengthen ourselves so we can apply, imbibe and apply and practice what we're hearing, because that's the way we mature and grow and end this cycle of births and deaths and be able to take responsibility for what's going on and have those obstacles removed. So are there any questions, any comments as we finish this chapter on how a spiritual warrior views the world? And I'd just like to know who's out there, if you don't mind.
Manjesh and Adi.
Adi? That person's been here. Where's Adi? I think I asked that the last time. Just the two of them are there now? Okay, thank you for hanging in there with me. I hope you found it helpful. And I hope you found something that you can use. No questions? No comments? No? Okay. Next week we go to how to strengthen ourselves. And I hope you found something you can work on this week and come back next week and maybe share with us. Okay? Thank you for coming. Have a wonderful week. Hare Krishna.